Tomorrow, on the road, the wake-up call. 1 to 3, we're going to be, well, actually, we're going to be there longer, at the Secret Wine Society in Oakland, Oregon. Robert and Dawn back in the studio, and they bring a guest, and kind of continuing the chit-chat about sake, and you've brought some more in here. And by the way, if you've always thought, you've been to, first place I ever tasted sake was at a Chinese restaurant. And if you always thought that really kind of cheap, garbagey sake stuff, and you're like, you've not tried the good stuff. The good stuff is actually great. And we're going to talk a little bit about that this morning. And we have a visitor that Robert and Dawn have brought in with them who's going to be at the shop tomorrow. So welcome back. So you wanted to just kind of recap a little bit of last week's discussion about the koji, which is they take this mold, they spread it on the steamed rice. It breaks down the starch molecule into simple sugar, which then the yeast that they add to it can chow down on and start creating alcohol. That's the simple.
Correct.
Oh, you said that in a way that's like, yes.
I guess I didn't need to show. I didn't need to show up today. That was really good. Basically, yes, we're continuing the discussion of koji. And like you said last time, there's the difference between koji kin, which means the actual mold itself, Aspergillus oryzae. But if somebody says, hey, I'm making koji, they're spreading the spores out onto the substrate so you can actually make some food product out of it.
Oh, my gosh.
So, yes, today we have a super double secret guest. I'm just like, when we're talking about making sake, we're mainly worried about breaking up these sugar molecules, these polymers or polysaccharides into smaller chains. And you also have proteases in there, which is why this wraps right into the food. Because not only is koji being used to spread on the rice or the koji kin, this koji rice is being used to break down the starches into sugar so that then you can then ferment it. They're also using it in the food itself. So let's see, Mr. Andreas, you have a mic in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Hey, good morning.
So This is Chef Andreas, and we have the Cowboy Yamahai sake. I guess we'll start with that one.
All right.
That's going to go with the steak and eggs that he will talk about in a second. But this Cowboy Yamahai is from Niigata. It's a Junmai Ginjo. You remember Junmai means they're not adding anything except for koji rice and water.
Yep.
Ginjos, this is milled down to 60. 40% of the rice is milled away. And Genshu means no added water to bring the alcohol down. So the toji in this case is Shiokawa Kazuhiro-san, and this place was founded in 1912.
Oh, really? All right. Well, let's have a little bit of that. Anyway, Chef, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here. So I'll jump in if you guys don't mind.
No, please jump in. You can go ahead. Sorry.
No, we're drinking. We need some.
It smells so good, so I couldn't focus.
The Cowboy Yamahai, right? I think you've been drinking a lot of lighter, sweeter sakes or milder sakes, and today we're looking at this savory sake. So it was a perfect opportunity to showcase some steak and eggs with a little bit of bacon. We used the koji here. Koji is often used to pickle vegetables, to marinate meats, and in this case, we use it to tenderize this meat. The time that this meat has spent in our koji has actually aged it to the equivalent of 45 wet aging days. So you should get a little bit of age on it, a lot of tenderness, a really hard sear. And just to put it out there, our steak is grass-fed, our eggs are backyard, our bacon is ranch-raised, and it's all in the Umpqua Valley down there surrounding Roseburg and Douglas County. So we try to focus on that local grown, produced product that the Valley grows so well. So I just wanted to highlight that real quick.
Okay, the steak is really good.
Okay, so let me add. So when he's talking about a koji, he's using shio koji. And Jorinji is the company that we think theirs is the strongest. You can get it from Japan, but it's traveling a long way. It's a live food. But also tell us about your supper club and what you do down there.
Sure. So I'm representing the Umpqua Supper Club, a small private chef company that I have. I am the founder and only employee, so call me. And so the Supper Club is about hiring a private chef for your bottle shop, for your winery, for your vineyard, for your store.
For your janky studio.
Anywhere where you need a little culinary love. And the Supper Club's big idea here is that we celebrate the things that are grown by our producers locally. We make everything from scratch. If we don't, I will name the person who made it. And we're seasonal. So here we have our steaks, our fresh spring eggs, our Mulberry Farms bacon, just some beautiful stuff here that really goes together with a Cowboy Yamahai.
You notice my wife's not saying a word. She's eating.
As she should.
This is the best Friday morning I can ever have.
I'll say this. So I met Andreas through the wine shop. His wife is wonderful, and they're both great people. And you start to realize what an incredible chef he is. He's the best chef that I know personally. You see these shows. So I've been to his house a couple times for dinner. Not lately, though, but
I got you.
It's literally like being on... You're sitting at the counter watching this performance. It's literally like Iron Chef, but I started calling him the Chromium Chef because chromium's way more durable, way tougher, way better. Double the hardness of iron. So he's the Chromium Chef. I'm going to try and make that stick. All right, so the Cowboy Yamahai, like he was saying, I've been giving you guys some of this stuff that's super clean, these Dai Ginjos that are very purified. We're going to move on to the next one once that glass is emptied, because I already did mine. This next sake is actually called Kinoko. And Kinoko is the Japanese word for mushroom.
I want to go back to the Cowboy.
It's epic.
It is epic.
It smells like a little bit like cocoa even. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. And... everybody talks about wine pairings and how wine pairs with certain foods. This is a different thing altogether with sake and the steak. It's like they go really well together, but it's not. It's a completely different kind of mouth thing going on. I don't even know how to describe it.
That's something we need to address. So like we talked about before, because the sake market domestically peaked in 1973 in Japan. Their target market is the wine market. So they use or steal all the terms from the wine industry, thinking they can move people horizontally, which is why I bring these little Yanagi Ochokos. It doesn't belong in a wine glass. And they start talking about pairing. Mm-hmm. Pair this with that, but sake doesn't actually do that. There is a saying in Japanese. It's Nihonshu. Remember, that's the word for sake. Nihonshu wa ryori o erabanai. And there's a poor translation that says it doesn't fight with the food, but that's not. Erabu is the verb to choose. Sake doesn't choose the dish. In other words, it wraps around everything. So I've come to call it the ninja effect. It's everywhere and nowhere at once.
Yeah.
It's a better way to describe it because you're not actually pairing things.
And by the way, that is really good. What is the...
Now you're moving... Yeah, so that's the Cowboy. Now you're going to move on to the Kinoko.
All right. Now this is the mushroom pairing.
Yes.
And the quiche... Oh, sorry. Here, let's do the clean glass.
So I'll talk about the Kinoko, and then Andreas will tell us more about the dish. So this brand is Mantensei, which translates as star-filled sky. And that's in Totori. Correct. It's Totoriken. Now, here's the thing. So they're using actually a higher percentage of koji rice in the final mix to give it more richness.
Wow.
And so see if you remember, so this is a Junmai. It says Ginjo, but actually this is milled down to 50, which you could call it a Dai Ginjo, but they don't. And the reason they don't is because this is a more umami-driven, savory style. When people hear the word Dai Ginjo, they think they're going to get something else. So even though they milled it down that far, they don't want to market it because in people's brains they're thinking Dai Ginjo is going to taste like a white wine. This doesn't.
No.
So the toji in this case is Kyoji Hakumasan. This is Suwa Shuzo in Totori-ken, and the rice is Tamasakae. I love this sake. So tell us about the dish that you paired and why.
Absolutely. So Kinoko obviously resulting in that mushroom. We wanted to really highlight that, and as we know in Oregon, we forage for mushrooms quite well. So this is a foraged mushroom tart. It's got a little Gruyere and Parm in it, a yeasted crust, so that we're not eating so much butter first thing in the morning. And then, so we foraged it, we laid it in the tart, we topped it with a shaved Brussels sprout salad with some whole grain mustard. And the idea here is the cruciferous veg and the mushrooms and that yeasted dough will come together to really highlight, and Robert puts this brilliantly, to really be everywhere and nowhere at once to highlight the sake here. And so we expect them to play together, some sharpness from the mustard to mellow out that rich butteriness of the sake. It should go along fairly well, and I really love this sake. It's really tasty.
It's awesome. Wow.
Hey, do we bring the thunder today or what? Mm-hmm. We have a molecular model kit. We've got the best chef that I could possibly find. And my wife's very quiet, enjoying her food.
She's enjoying food.
Chef Andre, where did you get your passion for food?
Ooh, so I was a young kid who had to learn how to cook early. So we were a family of 6. And so at some point we just picked up the mantle and started cooking. My mother was an incredible cook, but she kind of did her own thing. And so we picked up the mantle, and I realized that the only time this family could really sit down and talk was when we were nourishing each other, both with food, conversation, how our day went. And it became so essential to be gathered around the table that I just kept loving that sensation. I would cook and you would see people kind of lean back, rub their bellies, stretch their arms. And I was like, I got to make everybody do that every day. And so I kept cooking, I kept learning. Science is definitely one of my things. And the more I learned, the more I realized we're kind of barbaric with cooking. We're kind of using a sledgehammer to put in a thumbtack. So the more I learned, the more we could really
He's in the right
work
place.
food. Yeah.
All right, but how did you decide, okay, I'm going to go into the koji style cooking where, you're taking something that's normally used for sake and applying it to actual food?
Yeah, so koji is very versatile. So although it is used in sake, it's used in soy, it's used in miso. So the idea of using sake to tenderize miso or to pickle vegetables is actually quite old. It's us who are learning how brilliant the Japanese traditions are. And so it's not the only thing I focus on, but this has been such a great growing moment for me. And so with Robert really getting me to understand a little bit more about sake, it really started to click about where food fit and all that. And again, it doesn't choose the food. So you really, the margin of error is a little higher, but the more you taste, the more you know exactly what you want to do with the food.
Yeah, so we talked about these enzymes here with this molecular model. You've got this alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond, but when you're generating umami, you need to liberate the glutamate. So if you've got a peptide chain, now you need something to attack the amide bond to liberate it, to give you the umami sensation. So when he's using that on the food, that shiokoji is going to be higher in proteases than what you would use here, because we're more worried about splitting up these starches into carbohydrates. Remember, we milled away the proteins. Mm-hmm. But in this case, he's using something with more proteases to break and liberate the glutamates.
Man, it's amazing. We've got to take a break. We're good? Yeah. Oh, okay. They didn't know that we weren't. All right. So anyway, that was awkward. It is Robert and Dawn from the Secret Wine Society and Chef Andreas joining us on the wake-up call this morning. And we're trying koji foods and some great sake.
And there's so many ways to use koji. We're just getting started.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
So just to build on that, we talked about glutamate, free glutamate that Robert was just talking about. Mm-hmm. And so we know glutamate because we eat monosodium glutamate, MSG, which is a very powerful salt combined with this free glutamic acid. And so by rubbing the steak in the koji, the reason you're getting so much more depth in what's happening is literally because it's slowly eating that particular protein strand and liberating, as Robert puts very well, the rest of the flavors, the rest of the textures of that steak. Especially with a grass-fed steak, because they need a little more.
Yeah, let's be clear here. He did not add any MSG. I was watching him.
No.
No MSG added. He generated the umami from the food.
Correct.
If it were me, I'm pretty lazy. I would just powder it on, but it wouldn't be like this.
By the way, for folks that are going, what the hell is umami? It's actually, I guess you would say, flavor. It's one of the tastes of the sensation of taste. I mean, you've got, bitter and sweet and salty. And back in, the turn of the 20th century, a bunch of people got together, did a bunch of research and said, okay, there's this other thing that goes into the sense of taste, which is umami. You can look it up. It's a pretty complicated story how they came up with that.
Simply put, umami in Japanese means deliciousness. So you can tell where it's headed. And then there are other tastes as well that we're starting to discover, but umami was groundbreaking because you can't explain what miso tastes like without umami. You can't explain what perfectly cooked meat tastes like without umami because it's such a visceral, such a all-encompassing taste compared to sweet, sour, salty.
Yeah, so he's right. So the word umai means delicious. So if you eat something like umai, that means, but the mi on the end is saying deliciousness. Which do you prefer, the Kinoko? You like the Cowboy, don't you?
I like them both.
What do you want?
The mushroom.
All right. Mushroom.
Now, what is it? Kinoko?
Yeah, Kinoko is just the general term for mushroom. But think of all the Japanese maitake, shiitake, enoki. There's so many Japanese mushroom names that people are familiar with. But Kinoko is the overall term for mushroom.
Thank you. This is really good.
Hey, what's funny? So, I bought this modeling kit just for the hell of it, and
he actually has a model.
The funniest part is, so I look online, it has 444 parts. The number 4 in Chinese is considered to be very unlucky. My wife almost didn't let me buy it. Because
of the number.
Well, the number 4 is si, but the same sound with a different tone means death. It's like 444 parts is like saying die, die, die in Chinese. so I barely got this delivered.
It's essentially so he can make his own molecule models. And he brought this whole thing in here.
He's a nerd.
Well, no, but see, people don't.
Did you just say he's a nerd, Don?
He is.
Well, we've all been talking about it. We've all been talking about enzymes, but what is an enzyme? People say that word all the time. An enzyme is basically, it's usually a protein. It's going to catalyze or speed up a reaction. In other words, if you didn't have enzymes in your body, you'd be dead because the processes that are keeping you alive wouldn't happen fast enough. Even if they're thermodynamically favorable, it's too slow. So these enzymes will, when two molecules are coming together, there's some repulsion in the beginning. They need to kind of change the orientation to lower the activation energy, bring it together or break it apart, whatever they're doing. But the catalyst itself or the enzyme itself is not destroyed in the process. So these enzymes...
It's kind of like when Robb and I first got together on the air. I mean, he's just describing what, could have destroyed us, but...
You haven't been destroyed in the process.
Yeah, not yet.
Who is the catalyst here? I think Andreas is the catalyst. He's making us the most happy.
Why not?
Yeah, no kidding.
By the way, off the Chris Dental says, I love this discussion. Free glutamate. MSG. When I was in Taiwan, they sold MSG in 4 ounce to 5 pound boxes. Yeah. Smiley.
I would, I guess I kind of wish that my brother could be here to try this because he was very much against MSG. And he believed bad reactions to it. For folks that are MSG intolerant, this is something that they could actually consume and enjoy. Correct or incorrect?
Right. These are natural levels. These aren't excessive. They'll dump stuff in. Some cheap restaurants will just dump it in because it's easy.
Yeah, and one of the big things about MSG that people do feel a reaction from it. I can on occasion, and the reason is that monosodium part. That is a very potent salt. So if you're salt sensitive, hypertensive, if your blood pressure comes up as you consume salt, MSG will give you a small bit of a reaction, maybe a bit of euphoria. So that's why you see people kind of pushing back. Honestly, it is very safe just to understand that it is a very potent salt, so it'll affect you as if you were eating cured meat or anything like that.
The dose makes the poison, basically. Absolutely. That's the pharmacy saying.
Yeah, speaks the chemist over here.
Yeah, the dose makes the poison.
Okay, so let's talk about tomorrow's event. It is going to be at the Secret Wine Society. I get to be there. I'm going to be broadcasting live 1 to 3, but when does everything get underway?
So we're going to open the doors at noon.
Okay.
It's going to be completely insane because there's no way to get an RSVP. Reed from Casa Bruno will be pouring wines from Sicily. I've talked him into bringing one of my favorite Premier Cru Chablis, and he's also going to bring a Hungarian dessert wine. And his stuff is amazing. So you'll be at the end of the bar. Reed will be there. Andreas is kind of going to pass out some food. We're not going to have a buffet because it'll just get eaten alive and the food will be gone in 20 minutes. So he's going to pass the food. We just want people to come see where we are, what we're doing, and kind of just enjoy the atmosphere. It'll probably be a complete circus, but you know what? I haven't been to one for a while.
I love the attitude. All right, so noon. We'll be broadcasting from 1 to 3. And I'm looking forward to this. Nothing, it doesn't cost anything to get in, right?
No, just come in, check it out. So there'll be, he's going to be sampling stuff. If you want to buy the bottles that you've sampled, they'll be there for purchase. You can buy a bottle off the shelf, and you can run. We're just not running the normal kitchen. There's going to be too many people, but you can still purchase wines or glasses of wine. Mm-hmm. But there'll be stuff to sample as well. But just come check us out, see where we are. The town is amazing. Yeah, we love it.
All right, for folks that have never been to Oakland, if you're heading south on I-5 from Eugene, what exit do you take?
It's exit 140, and there's this one-lane bridge with a light at each end, and they're going to close it on the 18th, so we're good because they're building it out. But so just take exit 140. It'll loop you around. It's literally a minute and a half to our front door.
Okay. And you've got the sign out front that says Secret Wine Society.
Correct.
And downtown Oakland is not terribly big, so you're easy to find.
We're easy to find. Parking, I would say get there a little bit early. Parking, you got to figure that out.
Okay, I love that.
Well, we don't have, and there's no speed bumps. There's no stoplights. It's a